You are the most important person in all of RuneScape. In my last video, I talked about a theory that states that though there are many players around the world, each individual player owns their own quote-unquote version of RuneScape. In this theory, I mentioned that other players in-game are treated more like NPCs, more correctly other adventurers, but you play as the most important entity of this world. If you progress all the way through the stories and trials of RuneScape, you will slay some of the most powerful beings to ever exist. Players decide the fate of RuneScape and its greater world, even what gods will be worshipped by the townsfolk of Gielinor. You act as an avatar of agency and a protector in this game. I'm so dead serious, and I can prove it. Oh, hi. Thanks so much for letting me borrow your screen. I think this world kind of sucks, so let's build a new one. The world of Gielinor, as well as the other realms and planets that make up the greater universe, were created by a series of elder gods. From this, as well as other catastrophic events, the greater story of RuneScape unfolds. For most of RuneScape's lifespan, we weren't really exposed to these dealings. They were just a bit of flavor in the greater expanse. But now, in recent years, we've been able to meet these gods face to face, do tasks for them, even slay these greater beings. We'll be going over what the 6 ages of RuneScape are, who some of the most important Pantheon members are, and the most important aspect. Why you are the single most important entity in all of RuneScape. You create your own world of Gielinor each time you make a new account. I'm gonna be honest with you, this video was supposed to be about Varrock specifically, but as I researched this topic more and more, I fell down a rabbit hole of lore and history that dumbfounded me. There's so much to talk about, but we're going to start here. The deities of RuneScape can be broken into 7 tiers. This seems pretty convenient until we realize that we have no idea which gods are in what tiers. Some of them are dead giveaways, but we'll talk about those afterwards. These are the tiers. Tier 1, the Elder Gods. These are theoretically the most powerful beings in existence. Tier 2, Transcendent Gods, likely those born directly into godhood. Tier 3 through 5 seem a bit foggy, going high gods experienced, then inexperienced gods, respectively. Tier 6 is demigods, and finally, Tier 7 is avatars and aspects. Now, the Elder Gods are the easiest by far, the 5 beings that created pretty much everything. It'd be silly not to mention that there is talk of a 6th one, and who knows, maybe there's even more, but for what we know, there's 5 names. These 5 beings reside in a realm called RuneScape, and they kind of made the world in 2 parts, rifted by what's called the Great Revision. The Great Revision essentially wiped out most life on the plane, but with a huge asterisk. Some creatures persisted, such as the Dragonkin, an ancient species of dragon-like humanoids. They hid in a magical abyss to survive such events. Now, these Elder Gods have their own rankings. Joss is the most powerful, and Ma, who we'll be talking about a lot, is the youngest and the weakest. When Ma was reborn, her egg was corrupted in some way, stunting her growth. She was reborn with no sentience, left with only instinct. In this, she created 2 more gods, that of which I believe are Tier 2, Zeros, god of fate, and Saren, the crystalline goddess of light. And this is where the tier list gets a bit foggy. If you've ever played RuneScape, you've probably heard of the 3 big players when it comes to gods, Saradomin, Guthix, and Zamorak. Saradomin is the god of order, specifically with the motif of order at all costs. He is, by far, the most heavily worshipped god in all of Gielinor. Zamorak is his opposite, being a god of power, chaos, and change. His ambitions lie in moving forward and revolutionizing the world. He's commonly seen as a power of evil, and worshipping him can be punished in many areas in RuneScape. Finally, Guthix, the most interesting of the bunch, god of balance. Guthix was a mortal, a part of a race called the Nagari. He was peaceful, never actually in search of godhood. In fact, he spent most of his lifespan much against it. Peace was disturbed by our resident big boy Saradomin, coming with an army and an elder artifact, the Crown. Elder artifacts are a long story that I won't dive all the way into, but simply put, there's 12 and can bestow the power of gods upon the wielder. Saradomin expected the Nagari to bow to him, but arrogantly never expected the result. They were like, no. This sent him into a rage, as he was simply some human dude who was raised to godhood through the crown and began war against the people. A couple years of this passed. Guthix hid his daughter, Augie, in a cellar beneath his home in hopes to keep her safe. Saradomin regretted his actions soon after, as more gods slowly began to trickle in to take part in the bloodshed. One very notable one, Tuska, a boar-like goddess hell-bent on bloodshed for the sake of bloodshed, came in with her own army. Saradomin stuck to his courageous instincts and ran away! The Nagari people were now stuck with gods ransacking and destroying their world, killing people mercilessly. Guthix locked eyes with the swine goddess before she was attacked by other gods, one wielding another elder artifact, the Blade. Yes, the elder artifacts are named the, followed by a generic noun. That is their actual title. In hopes of ending the devastation, Guthix took the blade when the god fell unconscious and plunged it into his back. Much to his dismay, Guthix incidentally rose to godhood in this moment. Something he truly hated and despised was now bestowed upon him. Ultimate power. For a bit of salt in the wound to this terrible fate, the body of this god fell on his home, killing his daughter. Guthix spent his days and years traveling from world to world, basking in the balance that people held and learning how to harness his true powers. He fell in love with harmony, the idea of opposing forces staying at equal level, even in conflict. Where there was good, there was bad, and vice versa. He finally settled on an empty Gielinor, serene and covered in lush, non-sentient life. This was the final project of the Elder Gods, the perfect world. RuneScape, as we know it, is a proper image of what Fernesque looked like, the original home of the Elder Gods, before all the bad things happened. Guthix invited Saren and her elves to this world, in which they made a new home out of a crystal city. Guthix brought humans, dwarves, gnomes, sheep, and other life forms to this world, instructing them to preserve the balance. To his disgust, they began treating him like a god, praying to him, making sacrifices to him, the normal things you do for a god. He slowly appeared less and less, trying to pull himself from their memories entirely. Finally, he buried himself, deciding to fall into a slumber for the next thousands of years. Hence the quest, While Guthix Sleeps. And this is where everything fell apart. While he was away, the gods, namely Saradomin and Zeros, decided to take advantage of the situation, bringing their armies and conquering massive swaths of land. Many gods waged in this war, and this is where Zeros was overthrown, specifically by that of Zamorak. By using the Staff of Armadil, an elder artifact known as the Siphon, he was able to bestow the godly powers unto himself. In the wake of all this destruction, the wilderness was created from a devastating blast created by Zamorak, leaving it to the PvP wasteland we know of today, completely incapable of growing new life. Guthix was taken aback by this war, reliving his past with the Nagari, and immediately took action. He opened portals for each god, sending away every single one from Gielinor, easily overpowering each one of them. Saren was the exception to this, as she refused to leave the elves. She broke herself into shards and scattered them, which was satisfactory for Guthix. Finally, he erected the Edict of Guthix, preventing all gods from ever stepping foot on Gielinor again. He fell asleep once more, only to be ambushed and assassinated by a powerful creature, a part of the Majorod, a capable species created by Elder Goddess Ma. I told you she'd pop up again. Just before his death, he marked the player as a champion of Guthix, tasked with keeping the balance of Gielinor, even if it means directly opposing the gods. And this is where this theory really comes together.
You know, honestly, I don't really know what you're doing outside of my house, but it's good to see you. It's good to see you on a cute little RuneScape video like this. You know, I put out a couple of community polls, and I asked, like, hey, what do you guys want to see? But I didn't actually say that outright. But everyone likes Guthix more than all of the other ones. So that's enough to me. That's good. I'm fine with that. Anyway, subscribe to the channel, please.
In 2013, there was a 10-week event called the Battle of Lumbridge, specifically in RS3. During this event, Saradomin and Zamorak actually landed on Gielinor and initiated a battle, given the Edict of Guthix had finally dissolved. During this time, players were able to choose which god they would aid, offering energy to whichever one they chose. Per Jagex, this actually decided which one would become the victor, finally ending in Saradomin's favor. Because of course it did. I mean, he's the good guy, right? Right? If you haven't seen my last video, the thesis of the theory starts here, and I'd highly recommend checking it out before or after finishing this video. In short, I'm saying that as players, we each own our own version of RuneScape. We are the champions of this world, and other players in this instance are simply just adventurers doing their own thing. Examples of where this matters. If I complete a quest, it doesn't complete it for you. I'm saying that this is because there's two different instances of Gielinor in this case. In my world, I helped the royal chef in the cook's assistant bake a cake, where you helped in your world. I did receive some comments with some debates on this idea, but I think that the theory is really beginning to evolve here. Though the storyline may be linear in many cases, we as adventurers impact this world. In the quest, Fate of the Gods, we literally slay Ma. Yes, the elder goddess Ma, the youngest of the elder gods. As well, in that quest, in aid of Zeros, we have the choice to either aid or sabotage him. Though we may be human, many of the gods were. Our power as adventurers show no real limit at this point. We're a staff of Armadillo away from godhood, really. We manifest our will on this world, and our choices truly matter, each in our own version of RuneScape. There's something much bigger here that I want to talk about, and part of what I mean when I say that we truly impact this world. Referring back to the Battle of Lumbridge, the players decided who would win the battle. The adventurers of RuneScape, we the players, decided the fates of these giant gods that we hear so much about. This is done in so many different ways, from polls on the website to the Falador Massacre. The devs at Jagex design a world in front of us. We interact with this world and lay down the path that the game may take. Truly, a debate could be made for any game in this sense, given they must appease the players to make a successful game, but RuneScape really takes this to heart and truly bakes this into their world. Again, we spoke about scaling theory in a previous video, link in the description, but essentially, in the real world, the game RuneScape is a remote control for us to maneuver a real person in the world of Gielinor. Specifically, each of our individual worlds of Gielinor. Sure, due to the mechanics of the game, we progress at a similar rate, or rather we have a similar ceiling. But as time goes on, and our collective opinion transforms the lore and revelations, we take part in how we each individually impact our world. In all honesty, we haven't even scratched the surface of the lore in this world, and we have a really cool lens that we can peer through while we do so. I want to continue making videos on this subject, but now with our new metrics, with scaling theory in mind, with the metrics we found in the last video, all of these little things. Let's see what we can find out in our own little worlds. RuneScape is a marvelous game with lots of lore and events that we, as players, can interact with. But as we've talked about, more than just interaction, we've gained agency over Gielinor with our little remote controls, specifically our PCs and cell phones. As time goes on, the world within and outside of Gielinor manifests and changes as gods come down and impact it. And when these gods come down, we decide what will happen, slaying and sabotaging some gods while aiding and empowering the others. Though we may just be simple adventurers, our power increases enough to end the greater beings that created this world, at least in their weakened states. Truly, our potential, our force of will, our power over RuneScape knows no bounds.
You know, honestly, I'm actually really happy that the RuneScape videos have been well received in comparison to a lot of the other videos that I have done. Because RuneScape is actually like one of my favorite games ever. I've been playing RuneScape for a long time. I have an RS3 account and I have an OSRS Ultimate Iron Man. Yes, I don't like having fun. Thank you for asking. And I'm really excited to be able to do things like this. And I think that this has really helped sculpt the channel into what its main focus is going to be. What is that main focus? You don't get to know that yet. Subscribe. Maybe I'll tell you. I don't know. Thank you to all of my lovely patrons. I love you guys so much. And get out of my house. Thanks.